We've already seen some examples of list comprehension, but we've never had a video solely focused on list comprehension. So let me just go through a bunch of examples of how to make various lists using list comprehension. So let's start out making a length 8 list of all 6s. And if any of these are confusing, I recommend try to make it using a for loop and then compare the way I've made it using list comprehension to your for loop way, and I think you'll see that they're very similar in each case. So here, the thing that's supposed to go inside of the list, it's always a 6. Had to decide if it was a 6 or an 8. Always a 6. And then I need to say how many there should be. So I'll say for I in range 8. Okay, there's a length 8 list of all 6s. And the thing that makes a list comprehension, I mean, I don't 100% know, but it's these square brackets, then it's the thing that you want to go inside the list, then it is for, then it is variable name, then it is in, and then it is the thing you want to iterate over. So that is how I think about list comprehension, is what I was just describing there. Okay, so next example. This one, we're going to start with this my list. Okay, let me define it. And so I want to square each element in my list. So here, this I usually use I if it's some index. Here, it's not going to be an index. It's going to be an element in my list. So I usually call that X. So let me just leave this blank for now for X in my list. Okay, and so for example, if we do X for X in my list, we just get the original list. But that's this X, it's not the thing we want to put into the new list. Instead, we want to put X squared into the new list. Okay, so there is the new list containing the squares of all of these elements. For example, -2 squared. Okay, when X is -2, then this X squared is 4, and that X squared is what gets put into the new list that we made using list comprehension. Okay, good. So we're going to use the exact same my list. I don't need to define it again because I didn't change it anywhere. I want the sublist of my list containing only the even numbers from within my list. So this is going to be kind of similar. X for X in my list. So again, this would get us the whole list. And then I need some way of saying I only want those X's that are even. So here's how we do that. We put if after the thing we're iterating over. And now this is supposed to be some true-false expression, and whenever it's true, we'll get an X. So what's the true-false expression? In this case, we can do X mod 2 equals 0. And if you're comfortable with division with remainder or with modular arithmetic, maybe this makes sense. Otherwise, you can just memorize that this says it's even, this says it's odd, equals 1 says it's odd, equals 0 says it's even. Okay, with this percent sign too. So there we go. Now the other ones were, or this one was the same length as my list, but this one is shorter because it only contains the even elements from my list. So this next one, it's going to be kind of similar. We want to replace the negative numbers. We want to replace the negative numbers in my list with 0. So it's going to be an if, okay, if it's negative, but then we're also going to have an else statement. So here's how we do it. And unfortunately, I can't just do if and then an else at the end. We have to move the if to the beginning. So here's how we do it. So I want the element to stay the same if it's greater than or equal to 0. So I think this is the easiest way to write it. So we'll say X if X is greater than or equal to 0, else 0. Okay, for X in my list. And so, for example, this -2 got replaced with this 0. Okay, if you'd rather it look more similar to how I wrote it here, I can say I want 0 if X is negative. Otherwise, I want X. Okay, for X in my list. Okay, you get the exact same list, just written in a different way. And it would be nice if the if showed up in the same place for both of these examples, but that's not how it works. So just something you have to memorize, that if you're doing if and else together, then it goes before the for. If you're only doing the if, then it goes after the whole thing, after the thing you're iterating over. Okay, next, let's make the length 8 list of lists 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and so on. So this is maybe easier than you think. It's going to be the thing that goes into the list is 0, 1, 2, 4. This time, let's just put an underscore. That's another good option in range 8. Okay, so I get 8 of these triples, 0, 1, 2. Okay, and if you don't believe me that this is length 8, let me try to convince you. Okay, the length really is 8. What if I want like the flattened version of this? Well, if we were using NumPy, we could do reshape, but here we're not using NumPy, so what's the list comprehension way of getting this? Let me show you. I can say I for, and so let's think about it. I want to do something 8 times. So let's say I for j in range 8, for I in range 3. And so let me show you the for loop way of doing this one, because I think this one's the most confusing. I can say for j in range 8, for I in range 3, and then what is going into the list? It's I. So we can do make an empty new list, and then here we say new list dot append I. And let's check if I did it correctly. So think of these two as the same, and notice that they go in the same order. So here you should imagine j is set equal to 0, then I is 0, then 1, then 2. Okay, and the 0, 1, 2 get put into new list. Okay, then j is set to 1, then I is set to 0, 1, 2, and that's these 0, 1, 2 that get put into new list. This last one is just sort of for fun. Let me take this course catalog description of Math 9 and let me capitalize all of the words in it, again, using list comprehension. So let me copy this. And in general, if you have, I don't think there are any line breaks in this, but if you're worried that there are line breaks, you should put it inside triple apostrophes. So let me say string equals triple apostrophes, and then I'll paste this in. And the fact that it all showed up as 1 is a sign that it didn't have any line breaks, but maybe I'll just put in some line breaks so you can see that this still works. Okay, so this would not work if you tried to do it with a single apostrophe or with double quotes, but this will work with these triple apostrophes. And if I check what's the type of S, it's just a normal string. And so to use list comprehension, I mean, you could try doing something like C for C in S, but that doesn't break it up by word. That breaks it up by letter, so that's not what we want. So instead, I need some way of turning S into a list of words, and the way we can do that is we can say dot split. And here we get this list of words. Okay, perfect. So let's call this word list. And now if I do, for example, X for X in word list, I just get the exact same list. I get exactly word list, but I want to capitalize this. So for example, word list brackets 2, that's computers. And if I do word list bracket 2 dot capitalize, then I get computers with a capital C at the beginning. So how should this change if I want to capitalize all of these words? I should put a dot capitalize here. Okay, use the capitalize string method. Okay, and let's call this, how about cap list? And now I want to get it back to a string. So I don't know if you remember before, we once did empty strings, so just 2 apostrophes with no space in between, then dot join. And this smushes all of it together, and that's not what I want to do. I want to have a space between all of these, and so instead, let me put a space in here between the 2 apostrophes. And now I have the same string as we started with, but with every word capitalized. So that was just a quick introduction to list comprehension and some of the different lists we can make, or in this case, a string we can make using list comprehension. Okay, this was the list comprehension part of it. So thanks for watching this video.